Greetings and welcome to this episode of the First Class Church podcast, brought to you by Farmer Tech Group. I'm Dr. Timothy Farmer, and I am excited to be in the studio with the one and only Dr. Tony McNeill. Welcome, Dr. McNeill.
Thank you, Dr. Farmer. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you so much. And I want to take this time, in addition to you supporting my ministry, thank you for all that you are doing in the worship space, helping ministries all over the country and the world to maximize how they do worship each and every week for us to understand and fully become engulfed in how worship impacts our churches. So thank you for all that you're doing.
Thank you for those kind words. I'm delighted to be here and to support you and affirm the work that you are doing as well in various faith spaces and as well as online. So
thank you, sir.
It's a privilege.
Yes, indeed. So we'll get right into it. We go way back several years. I remember meeting you for the very first time at the barbershop on Edgewood Avenue.
Yep, it was around 2012, shortly after I had got hired at Historic Ebenezer Baptist Church, and the barbershop was right around the corner
in walking
from
distance.
The church. Yes.
And so I remember we exchanged a conversation then, and several weeks later, we ran into each other at the Martin Luther King commemorative service, and we've been connected ever since. So again, I'm grateful for our connection that we've had over the years, even going into support at the Hampton Ministers Conference.
Yes,
and the opportunity that you extended there. I'm certainly grateful for that and how that has been a blessing as well. So again, thank you so much and welcome.
You're welcome. Glad to be here.
Yes, sir. So tell us about your journey in worship and arts. I know this is your life's passion, that which you've done for many years. Tell us about your experience.
Wow. Every time I'm asked that question, I can't help but go back to my childhood. In those formative spaces of my church, home church, Oak Grove, AME Zion Church, in Irwin, North Carolina, in the Riverside community.
In the big city.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
That space is sacred ground for me. And I appreciate it more and more the older that I get. And it was at Oak Grove where I cut my teeth in music, period, but more especially in church music. I was granted the opportunity to play for Sunday school.
Wow.
After my parents made provisions for me to take piano lessons, the church space gave me a place to actually practice and share those gifts and share everything that I was learning in my private lessons with my church family. So it started in the church, and those gifts were also nurtured in middle school and ultimately in high school in band and chorus and all the way through college. So the church is where I got my start.
So, and I always tell young pastors, those who work in the worship space, never neglect those beginnings.
Right.
You know, from Sunday school to standing in front of the church for the Easter speech.
Absolutely.
And how that serves as a building block.
Yes.
Or helping us to develop our confidence, even into what we do now.
Right.
I never forget my Sunday school experiences and those opportunities to grow in the church as well.
Absolutely. Though, yeah, me playing like the opening hymn during Sunday school eventually led to me playing the opening hymn in what we call big church. Mm-hmm. Okay. And from playing the opening hymn, I started playing more of the service, which ultimately led to me leading the choir and being the minister of music at my church. As early, oh my God, I was directing the choir when I was like maybe 10 or 11 years old.
Did they have to stand you up on a pedestal?
My feet could barely touch the floor at that time, but I was playing from the piano and conducting from the piano at 10 or 11. Yeah. And, you know, all the choir members were old enough to be my parents and grandparents. And I was sitting there telling them what to do, telling them what to sing, how to sing it. and doing the kinds of things that that inform my life today.
Wow. So to that end, with having that upbringing and having the opportunity to develop your voice, so for a worship leader or musician or a person who serves in a director role, how would you suggest or advise from the vantage point of developing a voice or a call or having a sense of a passion? What would you advise to help those who are new or young in the space, to help them to develop their seasoning in that role or in that capacity?
I would tell any young person who feels called to worship ministry in whatever capacity, whether it's playing an instrument, whether it's singing, whether it's the technical aspect of it, because that ultimately is important as well, to lean into it, to shadow and follow people, stand behind people. One of the things I did as a youngster, because I was so eager to learn more and more about the piano, anytime I had a chance to stand over the shoulders of a more experienced pianist and just watch their fingers and to see the chord structures and to even ask them, can you teach me something? That was a big part of my formation, being full of questions and not afraid to ask them, and seeking people out who were doing the kind of thing that I felt like I was called to, and watching them and talking to them. And, I at an early age, I was going to people's choir rehearsals. I didn't have to participate. I just wanted to sit there and watch to see how other people did it. So whatever that passion is, whatever that call is, find the people that are doing it at the level that you aspire, and watch them, talk to them, ask them questions.
And would you also say that that's good advice for them to remain grounded?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And I still to this day follow that. There are times where I find myself going to other people's choir rehearsals to observe after all of these years, because I never want to ever take on the posture that I know it all. Always in the posture of a learner. And so, that is something that has stuck with me because I started so early. It's a part of the fabric of who I am as a worship leader, as an educator, to remain in the seat of the student.
So with sustaining ministry and certainly being grounded, taking on opportunities to learn and to experience others and going to rehearsals certainly plays a vital role in helping musicians, those who serve in the worship space, to remain grounded. So then in sustaining that, and because I know the church can be a challenging place, and even in the music space, it can be challenging with making sure that you're staying connected to the spirit, also working with people and personalities. So with all of that in place, being a ministry that's well sustained is certainly, there's a balance that goes along with that. So how have you maintained or sustained yourself or in a church space as you serve in various capacities? How has there been a sense of a sustaining in the work that you've done in order to not become burned out, not to become overly frustrated?
Yeah.
But how has being able to sustain yourself played a role in your longevity?
Absolutely. That's a great question, Dr. Tim. One of the things that I value about my ministry and the way that I do ministry is this fact that my leadership is informed by being in community with others, and especially those that know more than I do, or those that are just as curious as I am, those that are not afraid to sit down and collaborate and share ideas. That nurtures me. That inspires my work. That inspires me as a person and as a worship leader and educator. And so my my first response to that is to find community. Okay, community sustains you, especially in this kind of work that can so easily burn you out, that can so easily discourage you, that could so easily have one to second guess one's calling. And sometimes if you have that one, and you don't need a big crowd, okay? Just 1, 2, 3, a small group of folks that you can lean into when times are good, and you can lean into them when times are not good. And being able to share very honestly about what it is that you're going through, ideas and things that you need. If you need ideas about Easter, if you need ideas about Pentecost, or how to do a budget, you can go and ask those folk and not be embarrassed. That has sustained me. The other thing that has sustained me is being in environments where I'm not only an educator, but like I said earlier, I'm a learner. Going to conferences, okay, that inspires my work tremendously, and also reading and finding resources and magazines and social media interest groups that line up with one's passion. So those are a variety of different things that I do to sustain my work.
All right. And that's great that how you have taken those things in order to maximize your support of ministries has been a blessing to so many. And I see that even in your consulting work, which we'll talk about as well, how you've been able to help others to navigate in those spaces. So, and I know as a part of what you do, you help to promote the importance of 21st century ministry.
Yes.
And honoring our traditions, but also embracing the contemporary elements that continue to keep our traditions alive. And in doing so, that has kind of transitioned over into how worship unfolds from a technology perspective, and how our worship sounds, what our worship looks like in the sanctuary and online, how it's heard. And so with the evolution of technology and how we have the ability to connect with people musically, even though they're not in the worship space, what has been your experience with integrating technology in the work to support music ministry?
Having a clear vision of where any one particular worship service or seasons of worship services are going. From my work, from the work that I've done in both academic and church spaces, especially church spaces, I have gotten, I have been schooled on the language of technology by folks who live in that world. I don't live in that world readily, but I have grown to respect the kinds of things that they need to do the work that they need to do in order to make worship happen.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I have been very sensitive to learning some of the most up-to-date techniques and ways of doing things, and not just relying on what is most comfortable for me. So being open to hearing ideas from folks who are experts in that area, and also letting them know when I don't understand what they're saying. Mm-hmm. You say, can you break that down for me?
Sure.
But
making it practical.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But the thing that I think I have witnessed from the vantage point of being a music minister and understanding and not understanding fully all that goes on in their world, me being able to articulate, this is the goal for this service. This is what I'd like to see happen, and give them as much detail as I possibly can. Not only about the particulars of any one song or any one movement of the service, but also more what I call cosmic goals, bigger goals that I have in mind where I see a worship service going or a season of the church going, so that they can unleash their creativity to help fulfill that vision.
Certainly. And that's very important. And that's a very important connection, relationship amongst all of those who are involved in the worship service. And so there are two important groups in the worship space in the church that their marriage is pivotal to the success of a worship service. And that is, and this is still in the technology space, we're talking about musicians and the media team.
Yeah, absolutely.
Those two groups, of course, along with the pastor, and the pastor plays a role in how it unfolds. It's all a collective effort. But the cohesion between those groups in terms of how the service is heard and how the music is translated is very critical.
Absolutely.
I know we were a part of a conversation about a year ago called From the Orchestra Pit to the AV Booth, and how that unfolds on a regular basis in order to ensure that worship unfolds in a way that's audibly appealing and visually to how people experience the worship service. And so what has been your experience in terms of managing a good relationship between musicians and those who provide sound and visual media for the worship service? And so we'll stop there.
Yeah. Again, it's having a clear vision and being able to articulate that vision in a way that frees people up to do what they have been called to do, or what they've been hired to do, and having the confidence that they will get it done. But also understanding, as a music minister who is more music driven and arts driven and less technology, that I can't wait to Sunday morning to share those instructions, to share that vision with them, that I have to respect their need for preparation, just like I'd like for them to respect mine, so that things can come off at an excellent level. That communication piece and intentional planning, the conversation of it all. So a lot of our folks that sit in the pew show up on Sunday morning and they see a finished product. A lot of people think we just show up and we just plug things in and magic happens.
Yes.
That is not the case. The road to Sunday morning is quick and long. Long in the sense that it takes a lot to get there, but quick in the sense that they roll around fast.
When one Sunday ends, the next Sunday is starting.
At the benediction.
The
next Sunday, the preparation for next Sunday begins.
If you blink too long,
absolutely,
the next Sunday will be here.
Yeah.
So preparation is critical. What you said about communication.
Yeah.
It's very, especially when it comes to sound, because everyone hears differently and musicians have different needs.
Yes.
So it's critical to ensure that everyone is on the same page in terms of as far as what a musician or a person who works in the music ministry might need from a visual or from an audio standpoint is clearly communicated. So that way there's not an unnecessary frustration.
Absolutely.
Around that.
And if you are not clear on what you're doing or what direction that the worship service is going in, or what kind of sound is appealing to you, or what you need as a director or as a worship pastor to move the service along, it can be frustrating. And nothing frustrates congregations more than to see the worship pastor frustrated outwardly in worship.
Oh, yes.
You know what I mean?
Especially now we have cameras that can capture everything.
And the senior pastor, you know, sometimes pastors get so frustrated and they're turning around trying to talk to the music minister saying, fix that. What's that ringing up here? Like, I've seen all of that happen. And that has a toll on the quality and effectiveness of the worship service. So any conversations that can be had on the front end to alleviate those kinds of things can allow worship to speak for itself. And
that's where, as I'm sure you can attest, sound checks are important.
Absolutely.
Rehearsals mandatory. And I would even go beyond sound checks, but I call them, or a colleague of mine, he terms it as tech days.
I like that. Yeah.
because the sound check is just what it is to check the sound. It's not as much to troubleshoot as it is to prepare for that particular worship service.
Absolutely.
So periodically, quarterly, there should be an opportunity to help sharpen the connection.
That's
is
good.
to have a tech day. And what that is where everyone, or as many people as possible from both instrumentation to vocals, to come into the space to then have the opportunity to check levels, to fix where there might be a buzz or a hum, because people online are going to hear it. Even they may hear it in the sanctuary, but those tech days, but definitely sound checks.
You saying the word tech days triggered my days in as a minister of music, especially in some of the largest faith spaces where I've served, and we would have tech rehearsals. Specifically for doing a lot of starting and stopping. And I would also remind the choir and the drama team and the dance folk, whoever was involved, when we had a tech rehearsal, they came in knowing this is not a run through. This is a lot of starting and stopping, so that the tech team, the lights, the sound, all of the stuff that is going on behind the scenes to make what we're doing look natural is where we tweak all of that. And so, especially with Easter coming up, I would encourage music ministers who are doing collaborative things across different media, choir, dancing, drama, children, handbells, any of that stuff, to have a tech rehearsal specifically for lighting or audio, any of those kinds of things, getting on and off the stage. Those things matter, and we should make time for that.
Yes, indeed. And preparation,
Yeah.
we can't get around it. And so I call them one of my 10 commandments. My number one, I've taken my name and done a spin from 10 commandments to
I think
Tim.
I remember seeing that somewhere.
Yes.
Yeah.
So my number one 10 commandment is, thou shalt not wait until a Sunday morning
That's right.
to prepare for Sunday morning. And so with that, from a music standpoint, what are some of the things that you would advise in terms of preparation, even between Sunday to Sunday or beyond just Sunday to Sunday? What should preparation for worship look like, even from a long-term vantage point?
Well, a lot of that, it depends on where you are and how involved or how committed to planning, especially the senior pastor is, because that can drive a lot of what can and cannot happen. Is the senior pastor and the senior pastor's vision for worship. But planning should be intentional, not accidental.
Can you say that again?
Planning should be intentional, not accidental.
Wow.
A lot of times, churches don't resort to planning until something bad happens. Okay?
And that even happens technologically.
Yeah.
When something breaks is when we plan.
Yeah. Absolutely. And then we huddle around and we bring everybody together, and it's under duress a lot of times. And that should be the exception. Okay. But planning should be the norm, right? It's scary to me sometimes when I hear colleagues of mine or aspiring music ministers talk about, the pastor's over here, he or she, they're doing their thing over here, and the music and worship ministry, we doing our thing over here. And then when we meet up on Sunday, then all of a sudden the Spirit comes in and lines it up. Well, that should not be the case. Okay, we need to give the Spirit something to work with. Okay, and not rely so heavily on the Spirit to do the work that we can do ourselves. And I did a Facebook post not too long ago talking about how the Spirit can actually blow into our planning.
Sure.
The Spirit can move into our planning. Planning can be a pastoral task for not just the senior pastor, but for the minister of music and the musicians and everybody in the arts ministry. So our congregations depend on us to plan intentionally. We're doing the work that they cannot do for themselves. That's what we've been called into this work to do. So we should take planning very seriously.
And also that helps to develop a sensitivity to the worship as you have planned. If worship is well planned, and of course you're not relegated and obligated to stay within the confines, but it does give you, as you indicated, a basis. It gives you a way to
gives you a plan.
Gives you a plan.
Yeah, a plan, and I like to say that has pores in it.
Sure.
That's porous. And it's through those pores that the Spirit blows in to do what only the Spirit can do, and we leave room for that, or we should.
We should indeed. And so, leaving room for the Spirit to move, and in the space of worship, let's talk a little bit about spiritual formation and how we, as leaders of the church and those who work in music ministry, even in the technology space, the work that we do is not just work, but it is a calling. It is an opportunity to give worship and to give praise through the work of our hands and through the talents that we bring. And so worship formation in that regard is critical, because that, again, heightens the sensitivity. It gives us a vantage point that we can connect in a way unlike those who are in the world or in other spaces with the gifts that we have. So with spiritual formation, I know that is something that when you share and work with churches, that you help them to cultivate. Can you speak to how that's important with taking the opportunity to pray? Yeah. And not just waiting until Sunday morning, and other things that help to develop spiritual formation around worship.
Yeah. Typically when folks hear the word spiritual formation, one of the things that is associated with that is like Sunday school, vacation Bible school, midweek prayer, Bible study, Christian education, all of those kinds of things that happen outside of the realm of corporate worship. But I want to suggest that corporate worship itself is a tool for spiritual formation, not just an event that we come to and then we do spiritual formation outside of it. That and understanding that and approaching it that way affects the choices that you make as a worship pastor, as a minister of music, because you see those choices as participating in how people engage with God, how people engage with their understanding of God. And that comes through the text of the songs that we sing, that comes through the words that we select for our prayers and testimonies and offertory appeals and all of the things that we say and do and how we move in worship is a part of this, the formative power of worship. That worship is more than just this event that we go to get our spiritual rocks off. That when we're there, that we are being prayerfully shaped and formed and challenged. Okay, not only made to feel good, but being challenged and being edified to be the church in the world after the event of worship is over.
Indeed.
Okay?
Indeed.
And so the songs, the music, the sermon, all of that should work together to help form people to be the church in the world and to do justice.
Amen. Amen. I remember one of my worship professors at Emory University, Dr. Jimmy Abington.
Yes.
He says that the worship experience shouldn't just be a time to buck, sizzle, and fry.
Yeah.
But it should be a culmination of what has transpired through spiritual formation, through study, through prayer, through understanding lyrics,
Absolutely.
as you indicated, and even understanding hymns and knowing the background and the history of music.
Yeah.
Helps with spiritual formation.
And taking time in worship to teach about worship. The best time to teach worship is in worship. Yeah. Okay? And, given what you just said about the hymns, taking just a couple of seconds. You don't have to preach. You don't have to give us a dissertation. Okay? Just giving us a little bit of history about why that particular hymn was written, or something about the hymn writer
inspired
to
it, yeah.
to inspire how the people approach the song text. That's a form of worship education. That's a form of spiritual formation that happens in the context of worship.
And in doing so, that helps to ensure that the people connect to the music even more. So, and I learned that in selecting people to sing a song, or a soloist, or when people learn a song, people have a greater appreciation for the song who sing it based on their testimony and their connection to how that song was written.
Absolutely.
And so that's very important with understanding lyrics, understanding how it all unfolds.
Absolutely. People bring their lives to a text, a soloist or a choir, an ensemble. And I think it's up to the worship pastor to inspire people to open themselves up to experience whatever's being sung in that way.
Amen. Amen. I want to circle back to planning just a little bit. And we are in the season of Lent, and this is one of the pivotal liturgical seasons of the year. And so Easter is a few weeks away.
Yes.
And I've gotten a question, well, from churches and from colleagues, well, what are you doing for Easter, or what should we do for Easter? Yeah. And I'm asking the question, well, hey, by now, that's something that you should already know.
Right.
So in planning for liturgical seasons, so now we're approaching Easter in the Lenten season. So when should we begin to plan for Easter? When should we begin to plan for Advent? So that way we're not rushed into trying to get things together for Holy Week or for the season of Advent. What's ideal? What kind of timeline should a worship leader or a church pastor give themselves in preparation for the season?
When this Easter is over, you should start to thinking about the next one.
You heard it.
I'm serious.
Yes.
I really am.
Yes.
And especially those of us that are in this work and have been doing this work for years, it's coming. Okay? It does not. It does not surprise me. Yeah, it does not surprise me when I get DMs from folks that are like, Doc, what you got this year for Easter? I need something for Easter. And it's a week away, 2 weeks away. And you should have been thinking about this, as soon as Christmas is over. And really, if you think about it, this is how I think about Easter theologically, that, the Christmas season to me is the first domino to Easter.
Mm-hmm. It is.
The birth, the incarnation of Christ is the first domino that's knocked over that gets us towards Easter. So once Christmas Epiphany is over, I would suggest bringing your worship team together, especially if you're building a comprehensive program around dance and drama, children, and other different things that are expected to be active on that day. Those conversations can't start early enough.
No, you're right.
Yeah,
I agree.
And not everybody celebrates in the same way, but still, according to your context, you should allow yourself some breathing room for planning, for conversation, for idea sharing.
Getting the resources that you need.
Exactly. And just having those kinds of conversations so that you and the people that are working with you are not stressed out. These days should not be stressful days, or the stress should not be because you waited too late.
Say that again.
The stress should not be because you waited too late, which is often the case with a lot of folks.
Yeah, so the earlier, the better.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's never too early.
It's never too early. So even if you plan for, this year we're not doing a cantata, but we are going to do one the following year.
Yeah.
Go ahead and plan for what you're going to do the next year, or at least have the outline in place.
Yeah. And the other thing, Dr. Farmer, I would like to add, one of the things that I think also inhibits our ministries from growing is the lack of intentional reflection after we do something big like a Easter cantata or Christmas or Advent, that a lot of times we're so busy, we don't stop to assess what we've done. What did we do well this Easter? Where did we miss the mark? What, in terms of technology, could we have done better? I think it is critical, just as much time as we put in the preparation and the performance, that we should have dedicated time for the reflection. Okay? And that reflection should be documented so that when it's time to get the planning rolling for the next season or the next Sunday of that caliber, you have a point of departure that you can go, you can reflect from. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So I want to encourage music ministers that may see this and pastors that may see this. Evaluate, take the time to sit and talk and ask each other questions. What did we do well? Where did we miss the mark? And how might we do this better the next time? One of the things that I challenge my students one of the questions that I use to challenge my students in their reflection of the work that they do for my classes is, if you had to do this thing tomorrow, what would you do differently?
Wow. That's important.
Yeah.
Because that gives them a vantage point of how it should unfold and what they need to do to prepare for that. And I think the debrief, the reflection, provides an opportunity for those who might not work in the role of someone else to understand what it takes in order to make this happen, from a leadership perspective, to understand what it takes from a media perspective for things to happen, that it just doesn't just happen by, like you said, a magic wand or a push of a button, but there's a lot of work, a lot of moving parts and pieces that go into it. So that way, everybody, really, that should happen on the front end. But definitely by the time that there is a debrief, for everyone to be on the same page and understand and have the appreciation for that which goes into how it all unfolds. Yeah.
So that reflection piece is very, very critical.
So with meeting with teams, then developing strong teams and having strong teams is very important. Having a team and having everyone on the same page is critical. So in developing, and as you advise churches in how they develop their team, what is and who are a part of the team, and what are some things to help develop a strong team?
Number one, clear, detailed job descriptions.
Wow.
In writing. Gone are the days, I think, where you can just hire somebody or bring somebody onto your team just on a handshake, just on the fact that you saw them play and, I want you to be my minister of music because you know how to play the Hammond organ really good, or what have you. And when we do that, we make gross assumptions about what people are capable of doing beyond what we saw them do, the performance of them, if you will. The job description keeps the church and the leader or the musician, what have you, accountable.
So it adds
to the role.
Business layer to the structure.
Absolutely. The business, and I like to call it an accountability factor.
Sure.
Okay. It is worth the time and the investment to sit down and articulate clear boundaries for positions in worship, or in any role, leadership role in the church, whether it's volunteer or paid, but especially those paid positions. I don't care if it's just a drummer or the or the person who plays the bongos. They need a job description.
That's right.
Especially if they are getting a check or a direct deposit from the church. And in that job description, there should be some element of evaluation.
Sure.
That whether it's yearly or biannually, that is a part of that position. And that is what I think helps to keep those that serve in worship and arts ministry striving for excellence. You got an evaluation coming up, and the job description becomes the barometer for that evaluation. Okay. I get calls sometimes from people that was like, I need to do evaluations on my musicians. Do you have a rubric that I can use? The job description.
And
if you don't have it, yes.
Yeah, that help them to understand how excellence is to unfold based
Absolutely.
on the standard that's set from the job description.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But that has to be a priority, okay, to keep a team together, and just maintaining communication and clarity of vision, and a calendar that is accurate and updated regularly. And the worship pastor needs to be fluent in communicating in a variety of different ways, not just email. Okay, that if there's a way to send text messages, if there's a way to communicate through social media, people have different communication commitments.
Sure,
I would say,
sure.
And
phone calls help as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Phone calls are still effective, but you need to find out what works best across your ministry and employ those things all at the same time.
So this is a good opportunity to bring in a technology tool.
Yes.
So a tool that is very effective at helping with worship planning and calendar planning is Planning Center.
Yeah, absolutely.
If your church isn't using Planning Center,
yeah.
planning.center or planningcenter.com will help to get everybody on the same page.
Yeah.
I believe the cost is very cost effective, and it provides accountability for who's involved in worship and the planning of it.
Absolutely. I've used Planning Center a number of times, and I think it's one of the greatest tools out there. I was hesitant at first some years ago, but my best friend Rodney Whitley introduced me to it, and I love it. And I don't use it all the time, but any opportunity I get to use it, or when I'm working with the church on a consulting opportunity and I see that they use it, I dive right in and take advantage of it as a tool. It's wonderful.
It is. It's a great tool. So you, in the academic space, in addition to serving churches, you work with students, and you serve as a professor of worship and help students to understand the importance of how it should be. There's a scholarly element to it as well. So can you speak to the work that you do with your students, and what are some of the takeaways that you always implore upon them when they leave the classroom to go into the church?
Yeah. Thank you for asking that question. I serve as an affiliate professor of worship and seminary musician at Columbia Theological Seminary in Decatur, Georgia, right here in Atlanta, which is an institution aligned with the Presbyterian Church USA. And part of the work that I do for Columbia, in addition to providing services as a chapel musician and helping with our seminary choir, is to teach courses in worship. We have a standard course, Introduction to Christian Worship, that I've taught both online and in person. But I have been given the opportunity, since I've been there the past 2 years, to create electives around the intersectionality between worship and justice. That's the course I'm teaching now, and I call that course Just Worship. And it speaks to the formative power of corporate worship as a tool to help form communities of faith to do justice in the world. That the Sunday morning event is a shaping event that influences how people will behave after they leave that event. And so we talk about that and around language, liturgy, and planning. There's another course that I taught last semester called Music as Ministry. Wow. And this course was designed with students who are going into pastoral ministry, students that are going to be senior pastors or leaders in congregations. And what I do in that course is to expose them to the elements of a music and arts ministry. And we look at, what does it mean to have a music ministry? What does it mean to have a budget for a music ministry? How do you build a budget? How do you work with a minister of music? How do you plan collaboratively with the folks on your music and arts team? And what do you do if you are assigned to a church and there is no music minister?
Wow.
You become the music minister. I don't care if you have not studied music or that you can't even hold a tune in a bag. That congregation is going to look to you to lead its worship. How do you do that? How do you pick hymns? That's one of the things that those are some of the things that we cover in that particular class. So I'm thrilled that Columbia allows me the latitude
Amen.
to create those kinds of things based on my experience as a worship consultant and my conversations with clergy and music ministers. So I try to come up with things that I think will be applicable so that when they enter the workforce, that they can be effective leaders.
And that's one of the great things as I witness your work and seeing how the students, those takeaways, because I'm always concerned from a seminary vantage point of ensuring that students have the practical tools.
That's right.
In addition to the theological education, what are the practical takeaways? My vantage point is always technology, what they should know, but even understanding, like what you just said, if you go into the space and you are the only person there from a music standpoint to help guide that congregation, how do you work in that space? Absolutely. And so in addition to, and I love how you mentioned about the budget, because many times we see how the music unfolds and we see all of that which happens on a Sunday morning, not realizing what it takes to go into it and how budget plays a role. Can you speak more to the understanding about that? Knowing about budget and that things have a cost?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. Salvation is free, but ministry costs. Ministry costs. And I've taught a class, and I think I did a plenary session one year at the Hampton Ministers Conference, specifically around budgeting for worship. There's some churches who see the musician's salary as the music and worship budget. No, those are personnel dollars. Okay, so the thing that I teach my students and that I try to explain to churches is there are personnel dollars. You know, your music minister's salary, your musician salaries. If you have paid singers, those kinds of dollars, yes, are sit in a HR pot or a human resources pot. Okay, and then there are ministry dollars. Okay, money to get the robes clean, money to maintain the instruments, money to buy sheet music if that's your thing, money to keep the technology running. Okay, those things are very different than personnel dollars. And then coming up with a way to structure the budget so that you have the necessary line items to address the concerns and the needs of your budget. Every music and worship budget will look different from church to church, depending on what that church values. Okay, but those having that awareness is very, very, very critical to having an effective worship and arts ministry.
And I would even add to that is budgeting for multiple years.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, a few years down the line, you're going to have this particular need. How are you budgeting now, whether it's a part of the annual budget or if it's a capital need that money might need to be raised or acquired, or a special project is in place in order for it to be instituted? But think long term in terms of your needs, so you don't get into where a situation where it's not in this year's or a budget line item, but at least even include the line item for a portion of the cost now. So that way, if you have to do it 2 or 3 years down the line, you at least have set aside what might need to be the case in order to acquire a particular instrument or a piece of technology equipment.
So, and that comes about through conversation and planning with the senior pastor and the worship pastor, developing those more immediate goals or immediate needs and those long-term needs. But yeah, that needs to show up in the budget. It needs to be represented.
Yes,
Yeah.
indeed. Indeed. And so with working with teams and working with budgets and working with the congregation, and I know that you've mentored, you teach and you've mentored people even outside of the classroom, just in the church space. What should mentorship, based on your own experience with being mentored by those who you look to, what should mentorship look like? What should that connection, that relationship be for persons who've been in the industry for a while, to help those along the way? Because church looks different and it's continuing to evolve. So what does that look like to help ensure that, back to a sustaining ministry, what does that look like to help persons who are coming along the way to ensure that they have the support that they need?
That is a phenomenal question, Dr. Farmer. When I woke up one day as a mentor, and if you in this thing long enough, you eventually will become one. But early on, I was on this crusade to make those that called me their mentor exactly like me. I know better. And now I approach this thing called mentoring through the lens of questions. Okay? Because I feel that when I frame things through a question, it opens the mentee or the person asking the question up for discovery, and it opens me up to learn. And so I try to prevent from telling people exactly what to do, and start framing it around what's possible, or have you thought about, or what are you thinking about in terms of whatever it is that we may be talking about. So my approach to mentorship is grounded in asking questions, then more so declaring directives. Wow. Or giving directives.
Sure. So it's a learning experience.
Absolutely.
In both regards.
Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah. And true mentorship is I think it is grounded in this open kind of exchange that the mentee also gives to the mentor, if the mentor is open. Okay. Indeed. And understands that there is wisdom that the mentee could offer, just as the mentor offers to the mentee. I think there's an exchange that happens.
So what do you see as you work with those whom you that you serve as their mentors? What do you see as the future of music ministry? How do you feel at this point about the future of where music ministry is going?
I think in order for music ministry to be sustained, especially in the Black church, that the future of music and worship ministry, it will be grounded in collaboration, not only within a particular church, but across churches. As more and more congregations are closing, and some congregations are joining together to blend into one congregation. A lot of there are several stories, especially out of the pandemic, where congregations have merged in an effort for both to remain alive. And there's still more mergers yet coming that are on the horizon. Collaboration is the key. And I feel like those music ministers or worship ministries that stay in their own little corner and never come out to play with others or to collaborate with others in the sandbox, if you will miss out. I am seeing, especially in the social media world, a horizon or landscape of collaboration, even virtually, from folks from from one corner of the world to another corner of the world, exchanging ideas and doing things together is what will propel worship ministry to the future, I think. But being willing to share and being willing to collaborate with someone is also requires someone to know who you are. So in that collaboration, you don't feel intimidated. You don't feel less than. You don't take on the imposter syndrome because you see it as an opportunity. It's a win-win for everybody involved in that collaboration. And ego is a tricky thing with musicians and artists. And so collaboration requires us to check our ego at the door.
And leave it there.
And leave it there, yeah. For the sake of
Sure.
the common good, for everybody. For everybody's sake.
Yeah, because we all have something to bring to the table.
Exactly.
And we all have an opportunity to learn and to be in a place where we can be effective at the church becoming a first-class ministry.
Absolutely.
So as a worship leader and who has been in the worship space for many years, what, as far as being a first-class ministry and being a first-class church, what would be 2 principles for being first class that you would leave with those who are emerging in worship leadership or have been in the space for many years? What has been that which has been close to your heart in regard to being a first class leader in the church?
To me, a first class music and worship leader has as their primary motive or primary motivation for what they do the gospel, the story of God, and telling the story of God and reenacting the story of God from week to week to week to week, from service to service to services, a commitment to tell the story of God. And doing that through the arts. Okay. The second thing that I think makes a first class or world class worship pastor is not only a commitment to tell the story of God through the arts, but to also see the community as the primary storytellers.
Wow. And
not us, ourselves, our personalities and our egos. It is not an opportunity for us to showcase who we are personally or artistically, but our goal and our primary objective is to enable the congregation to tell that story and participate in that story of God in Christ, okay, through the arts. And when you keep those 2 things at the forefront, it affects everything that you do.
Yeah. How we tell the story together.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the job of music and worship ministry, is to equip the congregation to tell the story of God and to talk to God.
Because we all have a story and we are the story.
Absolutely.
We are the story. Dr. Tony McNeill, it has been a pleasure. Anything that you would like to leave? I know that you do consulting work and certainly want to honor that work that you do. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. Oh, yes. I serve as a worship and arts consultant, and part of the work that I do is to bring churches and worship artists and musicians together. That's musicians who are looking for churches and churches who are looking for musicians. I'm the bridge builder. I'd like to see myself as a bridge builder between those 2 worlds. And I work with churches and search committees who are looking for people to employ. And I also work with musicians who call and say, Doc, I'm looking for some place to go. This is my resume. This is the kind of space that I feel like that I would serve well in, and I tried to marry those things together. And I love that work tremendously. And I also do worship education work with churches where a pastor or a committee will call me and say, can you come in and do a couple of sessions on worship with our worship committee. I've worked with committees, and I've also worked with congregations to do some short-term worship education modules and teaching around principles of corporate worship. So I enjoy doing all of that stuff, as well as conferences, planning worship for conferences, and that kind of thing. So it's great. It's good work.
It is good work. And if you ever need an awesome playlist of music,
yeah,
Dr. Tony
Thank
McNeill,
you.
if you follow him on social media, he has an awesome playlist for Easter that's going on right now. But he has
It's for Lent. I got a Lent. Yeah,
okay,
for Lent.
For Lent.
The Easter one is not out yet.
Oh,
but it's coming.
It's coming. So
Yeah.
look out for the Easter playlist. But he puts together, he is very thoughtful as it relates to the music that he compiles and
Thank you.
And shares it. And we all love the work and the music that you compile.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. So thank you for joining us for this episode of the First Class Church podcast. Thank you, Dr. Tony McNeill.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Tim. This has been a joy.
Yes, indeed. Likewise, and looking forward to conversations to come.
Yes.
So if you are not following the First Class Church podcast, please do so today. Click on subscribe on YouTube and click on the bell so that way you can stay up to date with all of the future episodes of the First Class Church podcast. God bless you, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode. This is Dr. Timothy Farmer, your techno-evangelist. Faith cometh by hearing, and clear, powerful sound is essential to impactful worship. Check out my new book, Beyond the Soundboard, a practical guide to quality church audio for pastors, leaders, and media teams. Whether you're a pastor seeking better sound for sermons, optimizing your sound system, equipping volunteers, or enhancing virtual worship, this book provides the essential tools and insights you need. Order Beyond the Soundboard today on Amazon or at farmertechgroup.com.